Good afternoon, everyone. Is the mic on? Yep, thank you. My name is LaVon Palma Davis, and I'm the Senior Director for Health and Wellbeing Services here at the University of Michigan. I'm delighted to invite you to MHealthy's bicentennial event celebration featuring Dr. Martin Seligman, the founder of Positive Psychology. We're very appreciative of Dr. Seligman doing two events for us today. He did one this morning on campus in Michigan League, which was a full house, and now this afternoon. So thank you, Dr. Seligman. When our MHealthy team started planning this event about a year ago, we really wanted to focus on something that would be meaningful, relevant, helpful, and uplifting to the university community. And we reflected on this, our philosophy of well-being. And you'll take a look at this, and you'll notice that although we talk a lot about physical health and its role in a quality life, there are many, many different elements that contribute to a quality life for people. We believe that when we address all of these elements, we can achieve optimal health, well-being, and resiliency. So we chose to focus today on emotional and mental well-being and the topic of resiliency. And we decided to pursue Dr. Seligman to come to the university to give us his knowledge and wisdom that he spent many years developing and contributing to our society. During our bicentennial, we celebrate the contributions of faculty and staff that make this university a great university. This year, we also mark the 40th anniversary of the university providing supportive services to employees in mental and emotional health. Through our mental health counseling and consultation services, we offer confidential support to our faculty and staff on our Ann Arbor Michigan Medicine campuses at no charge. These services help to enhance resilience through individual counseling, work group consultations, educational programs, and organizational development, and we strive to empower all members of the community to live their best lives. I'd like you to join me in taking a moment to thank our UMHS Employee Assistance Program team for all that they do for us every day. Would you please stand, team? Please. Thank you so much. I also want to mention that at the end of this presentation, we'll be giving away 6 books of Dr. Seligman's. We'll be drawing those randomly. So if you're interested in one of those books, please stay, and we will be announcing that at the very end. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our new Chief Health Officer, Dr. Preeti Malani. She will then come up and introduce Dr. Seligman. Dr. Malani, in addition to being U of M's Chief Health Officer, is also a professor in internal medicine in the Division of Infectious Diseases. She's also director of the University of Michigan's National Poll on Healthy Aging. And prior to medical school, she completed a master's in journalism. I'm mentioning that because she's talented in that arena beyond comparison. She also has a master's degree in clinical research design and statistical analysis. She has been an associate editor for JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, and has published more than 100 peer-reviewed articles and editorials. You only need to spend a little bit of time with Preeti to just totally delight in her ideas, her enthusiasm for well-being on this campus. She's obviously very smart and accomplished, and we're very lucky to have her as our Chief Health Officer. Preeti?
Thank you, LaVon, and thank you for being here. On behalf of MHealthy, I'd also like to extend my welcome to all of you. And as you heard, today's event is one of several activities that's been going on this year to celebrate the university's bicentennial. And what better way to celebrate our 200th birthday than with an event that highlights the university's commitment to well-being. As Chief Health Officer, I have the opportunity to work with several individuals and groups across campus to think about health and wellness for our students, our faculty and staff, as well as our community at large. Health is not just the absence of disease. Health is so much more than that. Health is wellness. And when I think about health, I think about our bodies, our minds, our hearts, our souls, everyone who is in our life, everyone around us, everything around us. And I think not only about being healthy, but I think about thriving and flourishing. And those ideas of thriving and flourishing are really synonymous with today's guest speaker. And we're delighted to have Dr. Martin E.P. Seligman join us today. Dr. Seligman is the Zellerbach Family Professor of Psychology and the Director of the Positive Psychology Center at the University of Pennsylvania. He is known as the father of positive psychology, and is a leading authority in many things, including resilience and optimism. Dr. Seligman is a best-selling author of several books, including the aptly titled Flourish. He is the past president of the American Psychological Association, and he's received numerous awards. His current mission is to transform social science to work on some of the best things in life: positive emotions, good relationships, and finding meaning and purpose both at home and at work. Today's afternoon's presentation is titled The Hope Circuit. It's my great honor to present to you Dr. Martin Seligman.
You're in for a weird talk today. As my 75th birthday approached, I decided I would write an autobiography, one that was about the fields that I had worked in, and a tour in some ways of 20th century psychology. I'm going to give a big picture talk, but I was saying to my wife Mandy yesterday before I left, did you ever in your wildest dreams imagine that I would be coming to the University of Michigan to give a talk about my autobiography? And she said, you're not in my wildest dreams. That's, but be that as it may, this is a big picture talk. Oh, I have Mandy's photography here because I find it a lot more beautiful than what I do. For reasons that will become clear soon, I'm going to call this the Hope Circuit, and that is indeed the title of my book. And it's in many ways the story of my life. It's the story of three things that converged. First, that psychology moved from being about misery and suffering to being about flourishing and well-being. Second, that my life moved from depressive, etc., to happiness and flourishing. And third, that the world got better. I'm going to talk about that as well. To set the stage for this, I'm going to go way back to something Carl Jaspers called the first axial age. Strangely enough, for reasons that are really not well understood, 2,500 years ago across the world, suddenly there were a set of movements independent of each other. Athens, Judaism, Buddha, Jainism, Confucianism, all of which started to think about the human condition and the place of human beings in the universe. The time of the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, Zarathustra. It's an age at which suddenly human beings become aware of their being as a whole and what the limits are of human possibilities. And pretty much all of our religious traditions and philosophy flow from what happened in the first axial age. And the questions that they asked were about the human condition, about misery and suffering very often, and the question of mattering. Do I matter? Do I matter as a person? Interestingly, psychology has not picked up that concept. Doesn't ask the extent to which a person thinks they matter. And do human beings matter as well? And much of the philosophy and religious traditions were aimed at the understanding and alleviation of suffering and helplessness. Nothing happened for the next 2,000 years, essentially, at least in the programs that were proposed in the first axial age. Human misery continued unremittingly. Technology essentially did not grow. Wealth was not created. Human beings remained poor. Wealth doesn't start to occur in a growth thing until the gift of the Enlightenment, when human progress for the first time starts. Now, this may not be obvious to you, but all sorts of things happened after the Enlightenment against a background of nothing happening for 2,000 years, except philosophically. Mortality changed. So as this being a medical audience, you probably know that lifespan has roughly doubled in the last couple of hundred years. 200 years ago, only 5% of the world's population had access to clean water. Now 95% of the world's population has access to clean water. 200 years ago, 90% of the human population was malnourished. Now 10% of the human population is malnourished. Human suffering has decreased. And I think you have to be blinded by ideology not to see that. Morality changed. It's not just that diseases started to be treatable and lifespan went up, but human rights were recognized, and human progress has occurred in human rights enormously. Democracy took hold in more than half the world. Poverty, up until the Enlightenment, essentially the only way to get wealthy was to steal it from someone else. That's what wealth was. But starting in the Enlightenment, there is actually technologies that occur due largely to capitalism that increase human wealth. And just emblematic of this, how many of you have read Steve Pinker's The Better Angels of Our Nature? Okay, it's a must read. He has a new one coming out called Enlightenment Now. But basically, contrary to what you might think, violence has markedly decreased. Not only in the last 5,000 years, if you're born in London 500 years ago, your chances of dying a violent death were about 1 in 50 to 100. Now your chances of dying a violent death are about 1 in 10,000. And that's characteristic of the globe. And it's not only true of the 500-year trend, but the amount of violence in the last 60 years has decreased again. Now, again, no one knows why. How many of you know what the Flynn effect is? Oh, well, IQ has non-artifactually increased by about 15 points all over the world in the last 60 years. And we're mystified by it. It's not about vocabulary or knowing that Lima is the capital of Peru. Reasoning has gotten better. Your kids are smarter than you are. My grandchildren are much smarter than I am. And it's possible that there's not only been an intellectual Flynn effect, but a moral Flynn effect as well. People need to explain the decrease in violence. Human well-being has become a value, a universal value as part of this. And the brain is seen as psychology basically studied memory and perception because of the belief that if we knew the past, memory, and we knew the present, perception and motivation, somehow we'd understand the future, predict the future. But it turns out that what the brain is doing all the time is grinding out scenarios of possible futures. And in fact, memory and perception seem to be in service of this perspective act that the brain is about. And I'll talk about that more in a moment. So what I'm going to do is first give a very brief tour of what the premises of 20th century psychology were. My lifetime has been about rejecting all the basic premises. Psychology is very different 50 years later, and I'll try to take you on a tour of that. And my way of doing it is I've worked in 5 different areas in psychology. So I'm going to say for each of those areas something about what happened, what is happening now in those areas, and then I'm going to venture almost science fiction-like predictions about what will happen in those areas in the next 20 or 30 years, some of which are quite relevant to the concerns of this hospital. So, first, psychology, as I found it, was about misery and suffering, and indeed the Freud-Schopenhauer medical premise was the best that you could ever do in life was not to be miserable. And so medicine, psychology, the humanities, science should all be about what removes the crippling conditions of life. Basic premise, we're creatures of conflict and struggle and misery. Second premise, we're blank slates, the environmentalist premise that somehow we're born, we're blank slates, experience writes on those slates, and experience is all important. Second premise. Third premise, 50 years ago, this was the age of behaviorism. It had no cognition. One did not take consciousness seriously. Consciousness for Freud was an ebullition of much underlying basic things, and one wouldn't take consciousness seriously. And psychology didn't take evolution seriously. It's part of the blank slate premise. And the future was seen as derivable from the past and the present. And that's why we worked on memory and perception. And that we're prisoners of the past followed from this. That sexual abuse in childhood, bad parenting, these determined your life course. So these were the premises that psychology held when I first began to study psychology more than 50 years ago. All of those premises are wrong. Some of them dead wrong. Some of them not just wrong, but morally and politically insidious. And I'll talk about that. So now, this isn't a data talk, but now what I'm going to do is to look at those premises and developments in psychology and its future through the template of the fields I've worked in. So the first field that I worked in was something called learned helplessness. And basically, several of us discovered more than 50 years ago that animals and people, given uncontrollable events, things they couldn't do anything about, electric shock, loud noise, rewards that came in from the sky, that they developed something we called learned helplessness. And it was characterized by passivity, giving up, and stupidity. In the following sense, having trouble seeing that you were effectual, that you could control things in life. And we put forward a theory at the time which defied the behaviorists that said that people and animals aren't just creatures of reward and punishment, but they can actually learn something like, nothing I do matters. I'm hopeless. That's the theory we put forward. And it became pretty accepted and became a large field, and people began to test drugs and psychotherapies. Because learned helplessness looked a lot like human depression, people began to test psychotherapies and drugs against helplessness conditions and the like. Turned out we were wrong. And one of the nice things about living long enough in a field is to find out you were wrong. We're wrong in a very special way that's actually quite relevant to many of you. The brain, when we began to this, was really mush. The tools of looking at brain were extremely crude, and it wasn't until the mid-1990s that brain techniques became good enough to look at the brains of helpless animals. And something remarkable occurred. This is a little technical, but important that you understand it so I can say where I think the field of depression and anxiety is going today. I think I'll only use two brain parts. The first one you have to know is the dorsal raphe nucleus. So it turns out deep down in the brain of rodents and humans, there is a structure which turns out when it's turned on, it's necessary and sufficient for producing what we thought was learned helplessness. That is, if you electrically turn on or chemically turn on the dorsal raphe nucleus, the two basic behaviors of helplessness are shown in rats and mice. The first is giving up, and the second is a lot of trouble learning along with panic and anxiety. If you turn off the dorsal raphe nucleus, you can't get helplessness, basically. So it turns out Steve Mayer found to be necessary and sufficient. It also turns out, strangely enough, to be the default response of mammals to prolonged troubles. So it turns out the dorsal raphe is the machinery that is the default. And when bad things occur, the dorsal raphe goes on, and you start to see helplessness and panic. Well, given that, given that it didn't look like you're learning that nothing you did mattered, how come we're not helpless all the time? And the answer is, here's the other part of the brain you should know. The ventral medial prefrontal cortex up here has a set of discrete circuits, and they've been isolated very well now by Mayer, that turn off the dorsal raphe. The circuit, so there is a circuit in your forebrain that when it's activated is necessary and sufficient for not being helpless. That is, if you turn on this circuit when animals are helpless, when nothing they do matters, you don't get helplessness. If you anesthetize the circuit and the animals are actually doing something that matters, they're helpless later on. So it turns out the structure of learned helplessness has been discovered and is well understood. Now, here's why I mention it to a medical crowd. I'm very skeptical about neuroscience. I think neuroscience has been enormously oversold and is way beyond the data for the most part. But this is the first neuroscience model that's actually given me hope about the future of work in depression and anxiety. And here's why. Learned helplessness, although it wasn't learned, looked like a very good model of depression. That is, if you take the 9 symptoms of depression, all of them, except for suicide, are produced by helplessness in the laboratory. So many of us thought this was a good model of human depression. Mayer's work tells us, and this is about the future, that depression may, for the first time, be curable. Now, I've written 5 textbooks, 5 editions of Abnormal Psychology on all the therapies and drugs for all the psychopathologies, and the data have not improved over the last 30 years. Basically, there's a 60% barrier in work and anxiety and depression. I'm summarizing over 1,000 outcome articles at this point. Basically, every treatment we know for depression gets about 60% relief against a 45% placebo rate. not very impressive. For the first time, if Mayer's right, this says depression may be biologically curable. The drugs don't work, by the way. The drugs have the same 60-40 thing as the psychotherapies. But the circuitry here, right now, the resolution of things like we have no way in human beings of stimulating exactly this circuit. The resolution for transmagnetic stimulation, optogenetic stimulation isn't good enough. And the only way you can do it in humans is to drill into the brain. And I don't think we want to do that. And even then, have trouble localizing the circuit. But the science fiction part of this is, I believe in the next decade, we will find much better resolution in the human brain and be able to activate and turn off the dorsal raphe magnetically or electrically and turn on the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. Strangely enough, what's going to lead the way here is not medicine, but defense. Because 2 weeks ago, one of the most chilling articles that I've ever read was published in Science. The authors are the Chinese Academy of Science, sponsored by partly the Chinese Defense Department. Very few articles out of Beijing make it into Science, as you know. Basically, they took Mayer's model and these structures, and instead of using the dependent variable of helplessness, they used being a winner. They took 2 mice, they put them head to head in a little tube, and mice and rats have dominance hierarchies, and the alpha mouse pushes the beta mouse out of the tube. The alpha mouse is a winner. They then take the Mayer structures and they create alpha mice out of beta mice by stimulating just that tract. Or they take alpha mice and they stimulate the other tract and they make them beta mice. So there will be, I believe, an arms race between China and America in which they start to say, we put helmets on our soldiers that do transmagnetic. Well, at any rate, that's the science fiction. The good part that may come out of that is this may be the first time we have enough resolution to actually stimulate the relevant discrete structures of the brain. So that's story number 1. And the heavy lifting here was done by Steve Mayer and Tim Beck and David Clark. But the premise that we found is that what the circuit does, the circuit is activated cognitively. So we don't have an electric way of activating the circuit now, but you can activate it by doing cognitive therapy, by building hope. And I'll say more about that at the end because it's the title of what I'm talking about. First story, was that at all clear? Very technical, was that clear? Okay, it's a very scary story, but it's coming down the pike. The second thing I worked on in my life was the blank slate issue, the preparedness, the environmentalism issue. So I grew up, like most of you, being a hopeful environmentalist, that if we made people's environment better and we enriched it, we would produce non-prejudiced, brilliant, non-criminal people and the like. We weren't very good at that, it turned out. The breakthrough in this occurred in an experiment that no one understood at the time, in the early 60s, by John Garcia. So this is take you back to the area of Pavlovian conditioning and behaviorism and the blank slate. So the basic premise we had in Pavlovian conditioning, which was necessary to underpin a notion of environmentalism, thoroughgoing environmentalism, was that any stimulus paired with any other stimulus that was perceived would be learned about. That's what the blank environment writes that on you. So Garcia did the strangest thing. He happened to be working in an X-irradiation laboratory, and when you give X-rays to animals, they get radiation sick. They get sick to their stomach, essentially. And so Garcia did the following. He took a drinking tube, and every time you licked the drinking tube, you got a sweet taste, and lights and noise went on, and then you got X-irradiated. So bright, noisy, sweet water was paired with getting sick to your stomach. Got it so far? Okay, so then he asked, well, what did the rats learn to be afraid of? Well, they hated sweet tastes after that, but they continued to love lights and noise. They didn't learn anything about lights and noise, but they learned about taste going with illness. And then Garcia counterbalanced it, and he said, okay, forget the X radiation, let's use shock to the feet. So every time this new group of rats licked the tube, they got the taste of sweet taste and lights and noise, and then they got pain to the feet. The question was, what did they learn? They loved sweet taste after that. No change at all, but lights and noise petrified them. So Garcia basically showed that animals and then human beings are prepared evolutionarily to learn some things rather than others. That we're very good at some things as a species and very bad at others. And within the species, there are some individuals who are very good at some things and very bad at other things. That's what the past was. A field called evolutionary psychology grew out of this kind of research. It's a flourishing field these days that some people say tells just so stories, but basically looks at human politics, human sexuality, human learning through this lens of evolution. Here's what the science fiction thing that's coming down the pike. I've spent my whole life wondering why some things you learn don't go away. Like, I've checked into the Graduate Hotel, and I can't now remember what my room number was. And but when I was 8 years old and was in our cabin in the Adirondacks, I'd sit with my mother in the cabin, and she'd hug me, and there was a rainstorm, rain on the steel roof. And now every time I'm in a rainstorm, I feel this wave of relaxation. Much better than trying to remember 1404. Some things we learn about don't go away, and other things we learn about do go away. So let me tell you about another circuit that's relevant to this that you should. How many of you know what the default circuit is? Okay, well, I'm glad I'm here because I'm telling you stuff you really should know about. Many of us wondered, starting about 20 years ago, what part of the brain lights up when you listen to a lecture or do mental arithmetic or do anagrams. And there are literally 1,000 fMRI studies in which you give people in the magnet anagrams and you ask what lights up. Very nice. You always have to run a control group. What do you do in the control group? You say, oh, just lie there and don't do anything. So you contrast what the brain does when you ask people just to lie there and not do anything with what it's doing when you're paying attention to a lecture. And the results are remarkable. Serendipitous discovery, maybe the most important serendipitous discovery in neuroscience of the last 20 years. It turns out what lights up when you're listening to my lecture is very noisy. What lights up when I ask you just lie there and don't do anything? Uniform. So uniform, it's called the default circuit. The brain defaults to it. And it's the same circuit that lights up if I ask you, Kim, to imagine the future. So imagine what I'm going to say about an hour from now in your class. So this is the circuit that lights up when you daydream about the future, when you run scenarios about the future. Without going, and I'll say one thing more about this circuit. You got the circuit so far? So much of the time, all day long, what you're doing is you're running scenarios of possible futures in daydreams and in dreaming as well. Unfortunately, you're also doing it right now during my lecture. And there is evidence, wonderful. Is Chandra Sripada here by any chance? Michigan possesses the leading person in this field, a professor of psychiatry and philosophy named Chandra Suprata. Chandra has discovered that all day long, there's a 60-second cycle in which you listen to what I'm saying for about 60 seconds, and then you go inward. You stop listening, and you merge it with what's on your mind. You do that for about 60 seconds, and then you come out and listen again. So we have to find a new way of lecturing in which you lecture for 60 seconds, then you say stop, and unfortunately in this lecture it's not synchronized, so half of you are daydreaming at any given time and half of you are listening at any given time. At any rate, there is reason to think that what's learned about in the default circuit is very sticky, and that much of the stuff we learn about that doesn't go away is mediated in this daydreaming circuit. That's the second thing. And the heavy lifting here again was John Garcia and Paul Rosen, but its premise was, hey, we're not blank slates. There's strong evolutionary and brain constraints on what we can learn, what we think about, and what's learned permanently and what just evaporates. So that's story number 2. Third thing I worked on was something called optimism. So here's how this came about. We had done all these helplessness experiments, if you give people inescapable noise, they behave just like the rats. The next day when you put them in a shuttle box, they just lie there and don't do anything. But what escaped our discussion was this was only true of about 5 out of 8 people on average. 3 out of 8 people I could not make helpless in the laboratory. I began to wonder, what in the world's going on? Why are some of you invulnerable to becoming helpless in the laboratory? And so we postulated that optimistic people, or I'll do it the other way around, pessimistic people who believe when they walk into the laboratory, their theory of bad things in life is they're going to be permanent, they're going to be pervasive, they're my fault, and they're unchangeable. Whereas optimists are people who believe when bad things occur, they're temporary, it's just this one situation, I can do something about it, and it's typically not my fault. And we basically found that the 3 out of 8 people who we couldn't make helpless were the extreme optimists. So people who believed bad things occur, temporary, local, controllable. Couldn't make them helpless. And so we said, well, depression looks a lot like helplessness. Could you actually take pessimistic people and teach them to be optimistic and prevent depression? So the logic clear? No, so we began to do, this opened up a field. We took cognitive therapy, and we took techniques from cognitive therapy, like recognizing your most catastrophic thought and disputing it realistically, is taking these wildly pessimistic thoughts and teaching people to dispute them. So you're a 10-year-old girl, and you're in the cafeteria, your friends all walk by and don't sit with you. And your catastrophic thought is, I'm unlovable, I'm a loser. Permanent, pervasive, uncontrollable. So you teach her to look for evidence in the world that those thoughts are wrong. So she looks around the room and she sees all her friends are sitting together with the volleyball coach. And they're all on the volleyball team, but she's not. So the explanation moves to, it's a volleyball conference. It's not that I'm a loser. So basically, in a nutshell, cognitive therapy has people recognize their worst fears, their most catastrophic thoughts, and disputes them realistically. And it turned out when we developed this technology, if we took 10 to 12-year-old children and we in school gave them 12 hours of preventive cognitive therapy, basically teaching them how to recognize and dispute catastrophic thoughts. And then we followed these kids through puberty. They had about half the rate of depression and anxiety as kids who did not have this kind of preventive learned optimism training. So that's what was done in the past with this. In the present, the largest thing I've ever been involved in occurred. So about 10 years ago, the Chief of Staff of the United States Army, George Casey, called me to a meeting of the General Staff in the Pentagon and said, suicide, post-traumatic stress disorder, drug addiction, divorce, panic. What do you say about that, Dr. Seligman? And I said, well, sir, you've just described the reaction that many people have to combat that ruins their lives. But the reaction of human beings to bad events, to awful events like combat, is bell-shaped. And on the left-hand side, you have what you just described. But in the middle, you've got human resilience, where resilience means you go through a bad time in combat, but 3 months later, you're back where you were on physical and psychological measures. But even more important, sir, on the right-hand side, you have something called, well, I'll ask you, how many of you have heard of post-traumatic stress disorder? Okay, I finally got a complete show of hands. And by the way, I was at West Point last week and asked the plebes the same question. All of them have heard of it. How many of you have heard of post-traumatic growth? Okay, not many, 20%. Same thing with the plebes. So post-traumatic growth is a well-documented phenomenon. These are people who go through awful events, often have PTSD, but a year later are stronger than they were both physically and psychologically. So my recommendation to the United States Army, to General Casey, was to build the ingredients of post-traumatic growth. Now, we know some of those ingredients, and they seem to be the same ingredients that prevents depression. So, among other things, teaching soldiers optimism, we thought, would move the curve preventively toward post-traumatic growth and decrease the kinds of pathologies that were so much on the Defense Department's mind 10 years ago. And indeed, General Casey said, yeah, the generals have read your work in schools. We see you go into schools and you teach teachers the skills of resilience, and the teachers teach the students, and there's less student depression. Well, we've got 40,000 teachers in the Army. I said, really? I said, yeah, the drill sergeants. So your job, Dr. Seligman, is going to be to train all the drill sergeants in the Army in the techniques of resilience and positive psychology. And unlike what you and I do when we have a good idea and we try to convince our colleagues to do it, George Casey ordered that from that day forward, positive psychology, resilience would be taught and measured in the entire United States Army, and that would be his legacy to the United States Army. And he allocated on the spot about $145 million to do it. Basically became a very popular program. It's a regulation in the Army now, and we don't have control groups anymore because everyone has to do resilience training. But when we did have control groups, it lowered the rate of PTSD, panic, and depression, and lowered the rate of substance abuse. So that's the past. Now, since this is a hospital, I want to talk about cardiovascular disease. There is a growing literature, and I want to focus now on optimism, that optimistic people are less vulnerable to cardiovascular death than pessimistic people. Now, it started anecdotally, but there are now about 20 studies in the literature. Just give you one representative study, a Dutch study of 1,000 men and women at age 65. Good epidemiological study. You measure the health of the heart, obesity, cholesterol, blood pressure, et cetera, and then you wait for a decade to see who dies and who lives. In this case, you also measure optimism and pessimism. And basically you find that controlling for the traditional risk factors for cardiovascular disease and death, being a pessimist, being in the bottom quartile of pessimism is about like smoking 2.5 packs of cigarettes a day. So this is a major, pessimism is a major risk factor for depression, holding the panoply of risk factors constant. Optimism is a major protective factor. And I'm going to show you these are the people who have done the heavy lifting in this area. But just to give you a sample of work that I think should be important to you, on the left is county by county in the northeastern United States, the death rate by cardiovascular disease. Now, we traditionally measure optimism and variables like that by questionnaire, but we found a much better thing to do, and that was optimism has a lexicon. The word hope is in it, forward-looking and the like. And it turns out for the positive variables, there are about 50,000 words and phrases in English that are related to positive versus negative perceptions of the world. It will take a while to explain that, but importantly, hope has a lexicon. Optimism has a lexicon. So, this is a 140 million tweets study. We took 140 million tweets, localized by county through the United States, and we ran them through machine learning for hope and optimism and the like. So we ask, in a lexical model, can you predict county by county the rate of heart disease? And it turns out when you look at the Twitter model, the correlation's almost 0.7, astonishingly high correlation. That is, if you live on Long Island, very high cardiovascular disease rate, and also, as you'll see in a moment, a very nasty Twitter word cloud. If you live in rural North Carolina, very low cardiovascular disease rate, and a very healthy-looking set of word clouds. So, this is county by county. Now, this is it's a very cute slide, but it's also a statistical slide. So, this is based on 1,300 counties and 140 million tweets. The larger the word, the more it predicts heart disease. So counties in which the kids, by the way, it's the kids tweeting and people my age who are dying. So the tweets of the kids predict at a 0.67 level cardiovascular death rate in the county. Hate, fuck, she's, assholes, boobs, annoying. Those are the tweets in a county with, that's Long Island. These are the tweets in North Carolina. A wonderful, great, folks, thanks, Lord, conference, and the like. Statistically, if you take the 10 leading risk factors for cardiovascular disease, county by county, they do a worse job, put in the best model we can find, than Twitter alone. Now, let me go back to the science fiction here. Could we prevent cardiovascular disease, knowing what these word clouds look like? Well, no. I mean, saying great, folks, wonderful, just correlates with some underlying thing which is really protective against heart disease, and saying, fuck, asshole, boring, just correlates with something else. That's the real risk factor here. Well, I think not, actually. So, how many of you are cardiovascular people? Oh, good. At least a couple of people can tell me I'm full of it. So I have this weird, simple view of the heart. So I think the heart's a pump. Your heart is rated at 100 billion beats, like any other pump. And when you use up those beats, you die. Now, if you walk around the world thinking asshole, annoying, awful, you're basically killing your vagal tone. You're activating sympathetically all day long. You're using up those beats. If you walk around the world thinking, great, conference, wonderful, this is correlates with very good vagal tone. So on this model, it says what people think all day long is a protective or risk factor for cardiovascular disease. And that means if you can change the way people talk and think about the world, you might be able to prevent cardiovascular disease. So that's the third thing that I think is coming down the pike here. I'm about to lead to positive psychology and prospection, but this is E. Cummings' way of talking about what I believe about yes versus no. A lot of this work was done with Chris Peterson, my closest colleague, who died suddenly in Michigan 5 years ago. I greatly miss that's Chris. So the two fields that are related, the last two things I want to talk about, are the field I called Homo prospectus, and it originated at Michigan. I found myself about 7 years ago here giving something called the Tanner Lecture in philosophy, and after the lecture, Chandra Sriprada asked me, well, have you ever heard of the default circuit? And like you, I had never heard of it. And he said, well, you know, this is the circuit by which people prospect into the future and daydream. So Peter Railton in the philosophy department and Chandra Sriprada and I got together, and we began the long 4-year struggle of writing a book called Homo Prospectus, in which we basically argued that our species is misnamed, that we're not sapiens. Sapiens isn't wise and knowledgeable, and we're really not that. That's aspirational. But what we are is prospectors. We're constantly looking into the future. We're good at it. That is indeed the evolutionary edge we have. And this book basically goes through the neuroscience, the psychology, the evolutionary psychology that argues that what the forebrain is about is predicting futures, that it's the engine of the future. We basically argued that psychology has to begin again. That you have to look at the past and the present as machinery to better predict futures. Where you need to start is the prediction of the future. And let me bring this home to you in a... how many of you know about the invisible gorilla? Okay, good. So basically, if you have people look at a motion picture in which people are passing basketballs back and forth, and you ask people to count the number of passes, and a gorilla walks across the basketball court, half the people don't see the gorilla. How in the world could that be? Well, here's why. It's about the brain as predicting the future. Your visual system and your other sensory systems are columnar. At the base of the column is the retina, essentially, what gets painted onto the retina. And then it goes up through about 6 different levels at which what's coded is more and more abstract. So finally, at the level called IT, the highest level, you get something like Kim Cameron detectors and the like. Now, the reason I mention the column is mysteriously, if you count the neural connections, there are 10 times as many connections going down from Kim Cameron to the retina as there are going up to the holistic thing. what's going on here? Why are there so many downward connections? And it seems to be because your vision of me right now is a hallucination of the following sort. Your eyes move 3 times a second, and yet I'm stable. The reason I'm stable is your IT Seligman cells are saying, this is a lecture by Seligman. There are no gorillas here. The next thing I'm going to see is Seligman. Basically, what's going downward are the instructions, amplify basketball and inhibit gorillas. So every given saccade produces a hallucination about the future, which is confirmed. And this seems to be true across the entire sensory system. So basically, our argument is that the forebrain, the visual system, essentially are about predicting futures. And the present is the work on the default circuit and the possibility of a science of imagination. What's on the horizon is, bizarrely, psychotherapy of depression and anxiety has tried to undo the past or be about the present. But depression is preeminently a disorder of the future. Depression, on its face, is the belief that the future is going to be shit, and there's nothing you can do about it. So why don't we work directly on these cognitions of the future? And so there is a work going on and a book coming out by an Austrian named Philipp Streit called Prospective Psychotherapy. And what you do is you start with the thoughts about the future, and you go work your way back to the present and the past. Finally, this eminently says this premise about being prisoners of the past makes no sense at all. We're creatures of the future. We're born yesterday. We're constantly constructing new futures. We're creatures of free will and prospection. We're not chained to the past. What happened to you as a kid, and statistically it turns out, contrary to what I wanted, if you look at sexual abuse in children and you look at neurosis as an adult, the effects are weak. They're there, but they're weak. But if you look at what happened last month, divorce, for example, that's a big predictor. So it turns out this mythology about childhood, while childhood matters, it's greatly overrated. And in many ways, we're born yesterday. And the prospection says, let's look at the mechanism of that. Finally, positive psychology. So about 20 years ago, I was involved with a bunch of other people in saying to my constituents in the American Psychological Association, you guys have done nice with suffering and the like, but there's a lot more to life than not suffering. I mean, it's very good that we work on undoing what cripples life, but shouldn't we work on building what makes life worth living? What makes life worth living? What is happiness? And I basically argued that as a first approximation, there's an acronym about what free people who are not suffering pursue. What's north of indifference? What is human happiness? And the argument was that we pursue positive emotion, happiness, subjective well-being. We pursue engagement, being one with the music, being totally absorbed, being in flow. We pursue good relationships, we pursue meaning and purpose, and we pursue accomplishment. And so a field grew up which took this seriously and asked the question, can we build those things? So what we had done previously was to try to undo the bad stuff as opposed to directly build positive emotion, engagement, good relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. So many people developed interventions which directly enhance those things. Just one trivial one for now, so you'll understand positive education. If tonight you're assigned to write down 3 things that went well today and why they went well, and do that for a week. 6 months later, you will be happier statistically, and your depression will be lower. Not rocket science, but it becomes addicting. People do it instead of the last thing you think about before going to sleep is the argument you had with the dean, which is the way your brain is set up to do it. If you discipline yourself to think about the tulips that arrived today and where you're going to plant them, it turns out 6 months later you're happier and less depressed. So that's a flavor of it. And so there are about a dozen such techniques that work reliably. So we began to go into schools around the world and say, well, if you're going to make people happier as opposed to just make them less miserable, the place to start is in schools. So there are now literally thousands of schools around the world, not many in the United States, that take the principles of PERMA and positive education and teach them to kids in school. And very importantly, and this is why I mention it, when we do this on a large scale, so we go to like the Minister of Education of Kazakhstan, and they say, well, we want to do positive education in schools, but you're going to waste money making kids happier in schools? Schools are about numeracy and literacy and science, and it's a zero-sum game. So there have recently been 3 massive demonstrations, one in Bhutan, one in Mexico, and one in Peru. The most recent one in Peru, 694,000 school children, 700 schools divided into positive education schools and control group schools. And the kids in the schools who have positive education not only are happier a year later, but their grades are higher. They're national standardized exams. So it turns out that making kids happy in school makes them happy, which is good, but importantly increases their academic performance. Happy kids learn better. The future. I've never said this well. I'm going to try to say it well. It won't come out. Everything is better than it was 60 years ago. You have to be blinded by ideology not to realize that mortality has gone down, diseases are being treated, malnutrition is down, there are more women's rights, there is less pollution, you name it. It's better statistically. Okay. You'd think people would be really happy about that, and that people would know that, in fact. But we find ourselves, I believe, in a moral, political, and religious vacuum. Now, how to say this? I'll do it for Christianity. I'm sure I'm going to offend some of you now. Christianity was popular partly because of the crucifix, that it was consolation from suffering. And a lot of the drive of Christianity, Judaism, Islam it's consoling in a world that's full of death and suffering. What happens in a world in which there's less suffering? What do people turn to? Well, I believe they turn to the question of human flourishing. That is, I believe that the last election in the United States, Brexit, and any number of things tell us we are in a moral, political, and religious void. And so the question is, if the driving force for government, for morality, for religion can't be only the alleviation of suffering, what's the 500-year idea? What is it that might fill this void? Now, this is basically what I'm after now. I believe human well-being, human flourishing is such an idea, that the notion that government, religion, universities, science, individuals, their moral compass should be driven by the building of PERMA, by the building of well-being in other people and themselves. We should continue to relieve suffering, but I think that may be asymptoting. We may be doing close to as well as we can do about the inevitability of some suffering. But there's huge room for happiness. There's huge room for flourishing. And so my hope is that what I'm talking about today is a moral compass for the future. This isn't just about science. It's vouchsafed to us not just to be witnessing a world that's turning toward more flourishing, but to participate in it. The premise that's violated here is we are indeed cognitive, positive, and hopeful creatures. I started with the first axial age because I think we've entered a second axial age. So the first axial age was essentially, what is the position of human beings in the world? Do we matter? Why is there so much suffering? And can we relieve it? What happened in the 2,500 years that followed the first axial age, we did it. We relieved suffering, we created wealth, we created cures for diseases, hospitals of this sort. What is the engine of the second axial age? For me, it's the idea that human happiness really matters, that human flourishing matters, that planetary flourishing matters, and that we can do something about it. So here's my conclusion, and this is really now at age 75 what I work on. This is a science fiction book that you shouldn't read. It's called The Years of Rice and Salt by Kim Stanley Robinson, who's written some very good science fiction on Mars. This is very tedious indeed. The premise here is that the Black Plague killed everyone in the West. So humanity grew up through Islam, Buddhism, Confucianism, and they go through the same awful stuff that the West went through. In the 19th century, there's an Indian Raja called Kerala who is interested in technology and science and believes this will help the human future. And so he recruits from all over the world, all over the East, scientists and technology to improve the human future. And here's the recruiting speech he gives. I've left off the last line, which I'll conclude with in a moment. He says to these we will go out into the world and plant gardens and orchards to the horizon. We'll build roads through the mountains, cross the deserts, and terrace the mountains, irrigate the deserts till there be garden everywhere and plenty for all. There be no more empires or kingdoms, no more slavery, no more usury, no more property, no more taxes, no more rich, no more poor, no killing or maiming or torture or execution, no more jailers and no more prisoners, no more generals, soldiers, armies, or navies, no more patriarchy, no more caste, no more hunger, no more suffering than what life brings us for being born and having to die. And then we will find out for the very first time what kind of creature we really are.
May we all rise up to the vision of a community that flourishes. Thank you. We're going to have some time for Q&A. So if folks would just raise their hand, we'll bring a microphone around to you to ask questions.
I'm hard of hearing, so I'm going to go lip read as you ask questions.
Dr. Seligman, I had the opportunity to complete the Master Resiliency Program that you spoke of with the U.S. Army, and I found it very powering. I also found it troubling that, for example, we have lost more soldiers to suicide than to combat. So then I transferred The ideas I learned from that program, many of which were ideas from your positive psychology thoughts, Hunt the Good Stuff, for example. I looked at the attrition rate in my workplace, my department, high stress, and I wanted to bundle a number of the concepts from master resiliency. So my question is, and I also found it puzzling, for example, you mentioned the use of positive psychology modalities outside of the United States. I didn't hear you mention it with school children in our own country. Are you aware of any bundling of these ideas to develop resiliency maybe on a more generic level? So I wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. And thank you. I appreciate all the work you've done.
Well, it's a very good set of questions, and I'll give you an impressionistic answer. So I'm the chair of the United Nations Education Committee. So I just finished writing a report on positive education around the world, which is essentially the incorporation of these principles into schools around the world. Almost none of it in America. The mayor of Zhencheng in Guangdong wrote me and said, oh, yeah, we use your resilience program. We've trained 80,000 teachers, 240,000 students, and I spent 21 million RMB to do it. Australia, very similar stuff all over China at the moment. Something remarkable is happening in the Middle East related to this. Takes me completely by surprise. There is hope in the Middle East, and I'll tell you what I think's going on. The Emir of Dubai, about a year and a half ago, threw his cabinet out and created 4 new cabinet officers, a minister of happiness, a minister of tolerance, a minister of the future, and a minister of youth. The minister of youth is 22 years old. The 3 of the 4 ministers are female. The minister of happiness, Ohud al-Rumi, her condition of taking the job was that the entire Dubai budget run through her office. So every program in Dubai has to be evaluated on whether or not it will increase human flourishing. So I went to Dubai in February to see, are they serious about it? And I think there's how many of you been in Dubai? Yeah, you know, 16-lane highways, 110-story buildings. I think they may want to do for flourishing what they've done for 16-lane highways. You know, there was a coup in Saudi Arabia in August. It probably wasn't labeled as such, but the 32-year-old crown prince essentially took over. 2 weeks after the coup, in, of all places, Saudi Arabia, we got email from his office that said, Saudi youth are just miseducated. This extreme Islam stuff is not working. We want positive education for Saudi youth. And if you look at his press conference yesterday, you're going to see again the same thing. So I'm looking around the world and writing reports on where this is bubbling up. This is bubbling up in China, in the Middle East, in Australia, and not particularly in America.
That's so ironic because so much of it is originated from your work and others, as you generously have shared. And I find it very puzzling, especially during the times of uncertainty that we're facing now.
My friend Richard Laird said something very wise to me about science and politics. Richard is Lord Laird. He had the Blair unemployment portfolio. And we were walking in Glasgow maybe 15 years ago, and he said to me something like, I'm going to take positive education to the UK. And I said something like, I think the data are just about ready to do a small pilot study in Liverpool. And he looked at me and said, you don't get it, Marty, do you? You think that science makes its way into public policy when the evidence mounts and mounts and mounts to such a point that it's irresistible. I said, well, in all my years in Parliament, I have never seen a single case of that. Science is adopted in public policy when the evidence is sufficient and the political will is there. I don't think we have the political will at the moment, and it's part of what really worries me about our future. China's got the political will. I mean, the combination of this mouse study and doing resilience with all the kids in China tells me there is a political will there.
I think you just described a great example of disruptive innovation, and I just hope we won't be late in the game, so to speak, to benefit from that, because if we are, I think that'll be very telling for the humanity in general.
Yeah, thank you for your good question. It's exactly what worries me.
Other questions? While we're waiting for you to think, I might add that there is some hope on the horizon among employers, because we are seeing employers across the country, peers of ours, who are talking about these subjects and trying to bring programs to their employees. And some of our own faculty in the business school, Jane Dutton and Monica Warline, just wrote a book on compassionate work. And so it's a wonderful thing to see.
I work in crisis response to traumatic events and disasters. A lot of our work is to help people begin to talk about their situations. And I'm always struck by the tragic language they use.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we talk about reframing it, and the people who go out, and I am one of them, we talk among each other of building our own resilience, but I see a definite need for it among everywhere. And it strikes me as an old community organizer that it is also, that optimism is also somehow built in that sense of community and mutual support. And just any thoughts you have on it, I would appreciate.
Yeah, well, I have a parallel set of worries. So very many people I deal with, the word in their heart is no. They have a tragic view of life. I've had 7 children, watched them go through the 9th grade literature, Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, Scarlet Letter, Lord of the Flies. It's not surprising where they get the tragic view of life. What can be done about that? What can be done about that? I think we know empirically from this sort of evidence that optimism has all sorts of very good consequences for physical health, for success at work, for sports, for fighting depression, and that pessimism feeds right into this. But so much of our, I don't want to say moral fiber, but current culture is a culture of pessimism in which optimism is seen as something silly that television preachers do and the like, and pessimism is seen as deep and literate, and I think pessimism comes naturally. You know, I think basically we have a Pleistocene brain which evolved through the ice ages, and those ancestors of ours who said, oh, it's a beautiful day in Ann Arbor today, I'll bet it'll be lovely tomorrow, got crushed by the ice. We got the brain of the ancestors that said, beautiful day in Ann Arbor today, but the ice is coming. Prepare for it. And so there's an evolutionary ease to pessimism. And what needs teaching and what needs advocates is optimism and hope. And it doesn't come naturally. It's not the thing with feathers that just is always going off in the soul. Pessimism is the thing with feathers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I might follow up.
Please, yeah. Microphone?
At the beginning of my career, I taught for several years in a parochial school, and I had second graders. And for whatever reason, my young philosophy of education that I talked to my students about was my job is to teach you to teach yourself, so you will never have anyone who can hold you back. And it's very interesting because I had several students who were identified as having certain disabilities. I have run into them when I visited that community. One is a business manager. He couldn't read, he could barely speak. But, and others are working with autistic children. It's just, it really touches me because the third grade teacher would say, it takes me half a year to undo their confidence so that they listen to me.
Right. Yep. Colleen?
Dr. Seligman, thank you for being here today. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about is, as a community at Michigan Medicine, one of the things that we're very aware of, and the team here, my cohorts in the Employee Assistance Program working with people are aware of, is the crisis that we're facing right now in the medical system regarding burnout, compassion fatigue, things of that sort. There was a statement that I read recently, which was that, mindfulness cannot cure a broken system. Okay, so we are tasked with helping people individually support themselves, but I would also say that systems and organizations and countries are tasked with providing systems that help people to support themselves as well. If you had to speak, and I'm putting you on the spot, if you had to speak and sort of say a rallying call to systems or organizations and say, these are the three things, right, that you could really put into place to help from the top down, what would those be?
Well, I've got several things to say about that. So the dean of medicine at Yale came to us a year ago about physician burnout. And so we basically, and gave us a few $100,000 to essentially retool the school programs for medical students. So just this month, we're running the first pilots of resilience anti-burnout programs at Yale Medicine. We'll see how it comes out. Secondly, I'm much more active in British politics than I am in American politics. So I've spoken at number 10 at least 4 times, and I was there a couple of months ago, and I met with the Minister of Health, Jeremy Hunt. And Jeremy says our main problem at NHS is burnout. So NHS is also asking what they propose. We'll see if it comes, the British budget, one never knows. He wanted to take 6 hospitals, 3 whole hospitals, teach and measure well-being, and do well-being interventions, and then 3 hospitals control and look at physician burnout and patient outcomes. So again, I'm hoping that the kind of programs that incorporate, we do know a lot about how to increase PERMA in people. There's also reason to think that when your well-being is high, you don't burn out. Essentially, that's what burnout's another word for depression. So it's simple that if we had good programs for entire hospital staff, that we might decrease burnout and we might increase patient outcomes. These are inexpensive, and they're worth doing, and we're at the start of it. My personal physician is the president of the American College of Physicians. Turns out by accident, he's the one who, gives me physical exams, and he says his main theme is going to be reducing physician burnout. So this is happening. There are curricula that could easily be adopted in medical school and then in continuing education for nurses, physicians, and healthcare workers. So that's one of my hopes, is that people will find the funding to do this. The knowledge is there, pretty much.
Thank you, Dr. Seligman. Please join me in thanking Dr. Seligman again. Just a note for those who may not know, there are people working on this issue of healthcare provider, health worker resiliency in our organization right now. So they're very committed to it, very passionate. So we'll look forward to seeing what they develop for all of us. We have some books to give away. So I have the names for those who will be winning